The wind screamed across the Cascade Mountains, gnawing at the last strips of light as dusk sank into night. Lily Harper's boots sank deep in the snow, every step a struggle as she staggered along a road she could barely see. The blizzard was relentless, snowflakes swirling like angry ghosts, blinding her and stinging her cheeks raw. Her arms ached from carrying Maddie, her little sister's breath coming in shallow, uneven bursts against her neck. Maddie was bundled in every scrap of clothing Lily could find, wrapped tightly in their father's battered army jacket. But the cold cut through, merciless, turning Maddie's small hands blue. Lily stumbled, knees buckling under the weight and exhaustion, but forced herself up, her promise echoing in her ears, "I won't let anything happen to you, not ever." The storm had stolen their mother hours earlier, sweeping her away into the white when she'd gone for help. Now the girls were alone, caught in the storm's jaws with no sense of how far they'd wandered. Each step Lily took was powered by desperation and memory, a half-heard lullaby, the taste of cocoa on snow days, the way her mother's arms had once been a fortress. All that was gone now. All that mattered was Maddie. Maddie's head lolled. "Lily." Her voice was a cracked whisper, barely more than a breath. Lily's panic sharpened. She squeezed Maddie's hand, knuckles white, urging her to stay awake. "Tell me a story," Maddie pleaded, her eyes fluttering. Lily's lips trembled. She wanted to sob, but instead she started weaving a tale, her voice raw and broken, of brave sisters battling ice dragons and finding their way home through enchanted woods. Each word was an anchor, dragging them forward as the world tried to pull them under. Their path grew steeper, the drifts deeper. In the shadows, a howl rose, a wild, mournful sound, first swallowed by the wind, then rising, unmistakable. Not just the wind, not just wolves either. Something in that cry made Lily's heart race, hope and terror tangled in her chest. She hesitated, peering into the darkness. Maddie shivered violently, her breath hitching, a sound that struck Lily with guilt. How could she have let things get so dire? But she kept moving, whispering promises, holding Maddie's fragile hope together with her own bruised resolve. The sky above was thick with roiling clouds, blotting out the stars. No moon, no direction, only the hiss of the blizzard and the weight of fear. Lily's mind raced. Had anyone even noticed they were missing? Did their mother make it to help? Or was she lost too, somewhere out in the suffocating white? Each step grew heavier. Lily's legs burned. The world was narrowing, soundless except for the howling wind and Maddie's soft, uneven breathing. Then, suddenly, the ground fell away. Lily's foot slipped, and they tumbled together down a small embankment, snow billowing around them, icy and suffocating. For a moment, Lily couldn't move. Maddie whimpered, barely conscious. Lily blinked, vision blurry with exhaustion and tears. She tried to rise, her fingers numb, her will the only thing left that wasn't frozen. Somewhere nearby, the howl came again, closer this time. Maddie whimpered and pressed her face into Lily's shoulder, trembling not just from cold, but from fear. Lily's mind flashed back to the day she lost her own little sister. Her first, deepest wound, the one she'd spent a lifetime trying to mend by keeping Maddie safe. She gritted her teeth. "Not tonight," she whispered fiercely, hauling Maddie up again. "Not you, not now." Snow had drifted higher here, swallowing the road entirely. With each step, the blizzard battered them, driving them toward despair. The storm seemed endless, each gust another test, each shadow a threat. But Lily kept going, dragging her sister along, refusing to surrender to the darkness. A flash of movement to the left caught her eye. A shadow, gone in an instant. She froze, heart hammering. Was it an animal? Was it help? Her mind spun with questions and fear. But nothing appeared. Only the swirling snow, the silence, the ache in her arms. Her own breaths were ragged now, chest tight from the cold. She glanced down at Maddie, whose face was far too pale, lips tinged with blue. Time was running out. Then, just as the last shreds of Lily's hope began to unravel, she heard it, the howl again, but now it sounded different. Not a threat, almost a signal. Maddie stirred, her eyes heavy-lidded. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Lily nodded, not trusting her voice. Every instinct told her to be afraid. But she remembered stories their mother used to tell, about loyal dogs and mountain spirits, about rescue in the unlikeliest of moments. With nothing left to lose, Lily staggered forward, deeper into the darkness, toward the sound. She didn't know if it would mean salvation or disaster, but standing still was no longer an option. As the storm thickened and the world shrank to the dim circle of her vision, Lily's only guide was that distant, mournful howl. Each step was a gamble, each breath a prayer, each heartbeat an act of defiance against the night. Would help arrive? Would anyone find them before it was too late? Or were they simply two more lost souls, swallowed by the endless white? The wind howled on, and Lily pressed on, the thread of hope stretched almost to breaking, but not yet broken. The cold seeped into Lily's bones as she stumbled through the endless night, Maddie's weight growing heavier with every step. Each time Lily blinked, the world blurred at the edges, a dizzying mix of fear, fatigue, and swirling snow. She could barely feel her fingers. Her breath came in ragged gasps, hot against the scarf tied over her mouth. The blizzard pressed in on all sides, relentless, turning her thoughts sluggish and slow. Her boots struck something hard, a rock, or maybe a frozen root, sending her sprawling. Maddie slid from her back, landing with a muffled cry. Panic spiked through Lily, more chilling than the wind. She crawled to her sister, pulling her close, brushing snow from her face with numb hands. Hattie's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, lashes rimmed with frost. Her lips were blue. She was so light, so fragile in Lily's arms. A sudden terror gripped Lily that she might lose her here in this indifferent wilderness, and it nearly broke her. She looked around desperately, searching for shelter, for anything. The storm roared, making the world small and soundless, except for the beating of Lily's heart and Maddie's shallow breaths. Then, a dark shape ahead, the mouth of a cave half buried under a drift. Hope surged. Lily half carried, half dragged Maddie forward, every muscle screaming in protest, until they collapsed just inside the entrance. The air inside was hardly warmer, but the wind dropped away, and for the first time in hours, there was silence. Lily worked quickly, yanking off her gloves to wrap Maddie in layers. The jacket, her own scarf, a flannel shirt from the backpack. Her hands shook as she dug out a packet of emergency hand warmers and tucked them against Maddie's chest, then pulled the girl into her lap, wrapping her arms around her sister and rocking gently. Maddie's breaths were thin, rasping. She shivered uncontrollably, her eyelids drooping. Lily pressed her lips to Maddie's ear. "Stay with me, Mads. You have to stay awake, you hear me?" Maddie didn't answer. Fear clawed at Lily's insides. She couldn't let Maddie fall asleep. If she did, she might never wake up. Desperate, Lily started talking. Anything to keep her sister tethered to the world. She spoke of warm summers on the valley farm, of lemonade on the porch, of the time Maddie dressed their old dog Cooper in fairy wings. The stories tumbled out, fractured and breathless, memories and fairy tales woven together like a lifeline. She tried to make Maddie laugh, her voice cracking. "Remember when you painted freckles on my nose with a Sharpie? Mom was furious. Took a week to come off." Maddie made a weak sound, almost a smile. Outside, the storm battered the mountain, the wind's moan echoing through the cave like a warning. But Lily kept going, telling Maddie how they'd build a fort out of blankets when they got home, how they'd have cocoa by the fire, how nothing bad could happen because they were together. She was losing track of time, her own exhaustion threatening to pull her under. Maddie's body grew heavier in her arms, her skin icy and gray. Tears stung Lily's eyes, but she blinked them away, pressing her cheek to Maddie's hair, willing her to fight. She thought of their mother, lost out there somewhere. She thought of her own promise, the promise she'd made the night their father died, holding Maddie close. "You'll always have me." But what if that wasn't enough? Suddenly, a new sound cut through the darkness, a sharp, deliberate crunch of footsteps on snow. Lily's breath caught. She pressed Maddie closer, fear flaring hot. Was it a wild animal, someone searching, or something worse? A beam of light swept across the cave, dazzling after hours of darkness. Lily blinked, blinded, heart pounding. The shape at the cave's mouth was broad-shouldered, a silhouette in the storm, and beside him, a dog. Large, dark, moving with quiet confidence, its breath steaming in the cold. The dog bounded forward first, nose low, tail up, but wary. It stopped inches from Lily and Maddie, golden eyes locking with Lily's. Calm, intelligent, somehow reassuring. Then it pressed close to Maddie, laying its massive head on her chest, as if to comfort her. The man entered, kneeling, lowering his flashlight. His face was lined, his eyes tired but gentle. He moved with the practiced care of someone used to emergencies, but his voice, when he spoke, was soft. "Hey, you're safe. I'm Daniel Riley. Police, this is Blitz." Lily stared, trembling with relief and suspicion. Was it real? Or was she hallucinating from the cold? Daniel spoke again, gentle but firm, as he checked Maddie's pulse and felt her forehead. "She's hypothermic. We have to warm her up." He shrugged off his own coat, layering it over Maddie, then pulled emergency blankets from his pack, tucking hand warmers all around. Blitz pressed closer, curling himself around Maddie's small body, his steady warmth radiating through her like a miracle. Lily watched, almost afraid to hope. Daniel glanced at her, understanding in his eyes. "You did good, bringing her here. You saved her life." Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks, hot on her frozen skin. For the first time, the crushing weight of responsibility began to ease. She let herself trust, just a little. Maddie stirred, the color returning slowly to her cheeks. She blinked at Blitz, managed a tiny smile. "Doggy," Daniel smiled, ruffling Blitz's fur. "He's a good boy. He finds people who are lost. You're not alone anymore." For a long moment, Lily just held Maddie and watched the steam rise from Blitz's back. The world outside was still a nightmare, the storm unending. But in this circle of warmth and light, something like hope flickered back to life. As the blizzard raged on, Lily realized help had found them. Just in time. But the real test was only beginning. Would Maddie survive the night? Would they ever be truly safe again? But for now, Lily let herself believe in miracles, even the kind with fur and 4 paws. The storm outside pressed against the cave, a constant, howling presence that made the world feel impossibly small. Inside, the cold retreated little by little, beaten back by the combined warmth of two bodies, a pile of blankets, and the steady, reassuring presence of Blitz. The big German shepherd curled tightly against Maddie's back, his chest rising and falling in slow, rhythmic breaths. Every so often, he nudged her with his nose as if reminding her, "Stay here, stay alive." Daniel Riley worked with quiet urgency, his movements practiced and gentle. He checked Maddie's pulse again, watched her lips for signs of returning color, tucked a fresh hand warmer under her chin. He didn't rush Lily, but he didn't ignore her either. Occasionally, his eyes would flick up to meet hers, soft blue, watchful, careful not to scare her. In those glances, Lily saw both comfort and something older, sadder, like he carried his own ghosts. Maddie began to shiver. A good sign, Daniel said, and she whimpered softly, clinging to Blitz's fur. Lily hovered nearby, uncertain, feeling both relief and guilt swirl inside her. She was grateful, of course, thankful beyond words for this impossible rescue. But she was also ashamed that she'd let things get so desperate, that Maddie had come so close to the edge. The responsibility weighed on her like the snow outside, heavy and unforgiving. Daniel set up a small lantern, its golden light filling the cave. The storm's roar softened, became a dull, distant rumble. With the immediate danger easing, the world felt strangely quiet, suspended between disaster and hope. Blitz's eyes were half closed, but he was alert, every muscle tuned to the two girls' breathing. He reminded Lily of an old knight from one of Maddie's fairy tales, stoic, steady, a silent guardian in the darkness. Maddie reached out, her thin fingers winding into Blitz's fur. "You're so warm," she murmured, voice weak but real. Lily's heart clenched at the sound. Daniel handed Lily a small packet. "Here, sugar gel, for Maddie. Tiny sips. She needs energy." His voice was calm, but Lily could sense the tension beneath it, the worry that hovered just behind his professionalism. She squeezed a bit of the gel onto Maddie's lips, coaxing her to swallow. Maddie obeyed, then managed a shaky, hopeful smile. "Are we safe now?" Lily hesitated, her own doubt gnawing at her, but Daniel answered first. "You are now, I promise." There was something in the way he said it, quiet but certain, that made Lily want to believe. Minutes crawled by. Daniel dug out a battered thermos and poured lukewarm cocoa into the plastic lid, offering it to Lily. Her hands shook as she took it, and he nodded as if he understood more than he said. After a long silence, Lily finally spoke, voice hushed. "How did you find us? No one even knew where we were." Daniel met her gaze, then looked away, as if weighing how much to reveal. "Sometimes you just know," he said, shrugging slightly. "I've learned to trust that feeling. I saw your mom's car by the old logging road, guessed you'd follow the creek. And Blitz," he nodded at the dog, "Blitz always finds the lost ones." A pause settled over them, filled only by the soft sounds of Maddie sipping cocoa and Blitz's tail thumping against the cave floor. Lily felt something in her chest loosen, a knot she hadn't realized was there. She wanted to trust Daniel, but trust was a dangerous thing. She'd learned that from a lifetime of broken promises, and yet, watching Daniel as he checked on Maddie, as he adjusted Blitz's harness, she saw no trace of impatience or doubt. Just a calm, relentless determination that felt almost foreign in this world of blizzards and loss. She asked quietly, "Aren't you supposed to wait for backup? Protocol or whatever?" Daniel's mouth twitched. "Maybe, but sometimes protocol isn't enough. Sometimes you have to risk it, just because it's right." Lily nodded, understanding more than she wanted to admit. There were times you just had to go, no matter the rules. She wondered what it cost him to make that choice, what he'd lost, what ghosts he carried in his heart. The storm began to wane, its fury spent. The silence outside was thick, almost oppressive. Daniel shifted, checking the supplies in his pack. "We'll wait a bit longer before moving. Maddie needs to rest, and you both need food and warmth. We'll make it, I promise." Lily watched him, her suspicion fading bit by bit. She realized she wanted to believe him, not just for her own sake, but for Maddie's too. Blitz rose, stretched, and nudged Daniel's hand before settling back beside the sisters. Maddie giggled weakly, burying her face in the dog's thick fur. For the first time, Lily saw a hint of color in her cheeks, a flicker of life returning. As they waited, Daniel spoke of small things, the way snow changed the sound of the world, the tricks of reading wind patterns, how Blitz had saved hikers, lost children, even an old man who'd wandered out after a fight with his wife. His voice was gentle, storytelling, as if to lull them both into a sense of safety. Lily listened, grateful for the distraction, for the warmth that slowly crept into her bones. She realized that maybe, just maybe, they weren't alone anymore. Maybe it was okay to lean on someone else, to trust, at least for tonight. But as she drifted near sleep, the questions crept back in. Would Maddie be strong enough to travel? Was their mother still alive out there, somewhere in the storm? And could she really trust this quiet, haunted officer and his remarkable dog with her sister's life? The lantern flickered, casting long shadows on the cave walls. Blitz shifted, pressing closer. Daniel sat watch, his silhouette steady against the darkness, as if daring the night to try again. Lily lay awake, hope and fear fighting inside her. For now, they had warmth. They had each other. But the blizzard was only the beginning, and dawn would bring its own dangers, and choices she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Dawn broke as a pale, uncertain glow through the clouds, barely enough to stain the endless white of the storm-blasted mountains. For a long time, Lily lay curled against Maddie, eyes open, listening to the wind's last exhausted moans. Daniel sat with his back to the cave wall, Blitz's head resting on his knee, the dog's golden eyes vigilant even in half-sleep. No one spoke for a while. The silence was almost holy. Maddie's color was better, her breaths deeper, cheeks less ghostly, but she remained fragile, her body shivering even beneath the borrowed blankets. Every time Lily checked Maddie's pulse or squeezed her hand, a new flicker of dread shot through her. How much longer could her sister survive out here? The world felt huge and empty, the snow drifts like walls closing in. She was grateful for Daniel's presence, but still, her instinct was to do everything herself, to keep control, to keep Maddie safe by her own hands. Daniel moved with the deliberate calm of someone used to waiting. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but steady. "Storm's easing up. There's a window, maybe 2 hours, before the next front rolls in." He looked at Lily. "We should try to get moving while we can. I know these woods, but we'll have to go slow." He didn't say the rest. What could happen if Maddie collapsed again, or if they got caught in another blizzard? But the weight of it was there, between the words. They packed what little they had. Daniel bundled Maddie up, checking her over with careful hands. He fashioned a sling out of a blanket, easing her onto his back, strong but gentle. Blitz led the way, his steps sure even in the deep snow, every so often glancing back to check on the sisters. Lily trudged behind, her legs leaden, but her mind sharp with anxiety. The woods were transformed in daylight, branches heavy with white, the air bitter with cold, but beautiful in its own severe way. The path was unfamiliar, and as they walked, a strange sense of being watched crept in. Maybe it was just the aftershock of fear, or maybe something about these woods didn't want to let them go. After what felt like hours, with Maddie drifting in and out of sleep against Daniel's back, Blitz suddenly stopped, his ears pricked, nose working. Daniel signaled Lily to pause. Up ahead, through the trees, the outline of a building emerged, impossibly tall, its peaked roof lost in the swirling mist. A mansion. It seemed to shimmer through the trees, unreal, windows glowing gold, smoke curling lazily from the chimney. Its driveway was a pristine ribbon of snow, untouched by tire tracks or footprints. For a moment, Lily doubted her own senses. Had the cold gotten to her brain? Was this a mirage? Daniel hesitated. His instincts screamed caution, but one look at Maddie's face, gray with exhaustion, lips barely moving, made up his mind. "Let's go," he said, voice low but certain. They approached slowly, Blitz in the lead, nose twitching. The mansion's door was unlocked, creaking open into a grand, high-ceilinged foyer. Warm air hit Lily's face, blessed, fragrant with wood smoke and something sweet. A fire crackled in a massive stone hearth. Lily nearly wept at the sight of it. They carried Maddie inside. The entry hall was filled with odd, haunting comforts. A battered armchair near the fire, old oil paintings of mountains and rivers, a crystal bowl full of winter apples. In the corner, a piano glinted in the weak light. Most striking of all, above the mantel, sat a music box, its design identical to the one Lily and Maddie's father had owned, back when life was whole. Maddie stirred, her eyes widened as she spotted the music box. "Daddy's," she murmured, voice dreamy, barely above a whisper. Daniel settled Maddie on the couch, covering her in blankets. Blitz stayed pressed to her side, his eyes tracking every movement. Lily wandered the room, both comforted and unsettled by the familiarity of so many details. The blanket pattern, the chipped mug on the side table, the faint, ghostly notes that drifted out when Daniel turned the music box's key. For a moment, it felt as if their father might walk through the door at any minute. In the kitchen, Daniel found the pantry stocked with cans and dried goods. The kettle was still warm on the stove, as if someone had been there just moments before. He frowned, but said nothing, fixing soup for Maddie and tea for Lily. While Maddie sipped slowly, her eyes never left the music box. "It plays the same song," she said. "How could it be here?" Lily tried to smile, but the question hung in the air, heavy as stone. She was grateful for the food, the warmth, the roof over their heads. But she couldn't shake the sense of unease. Who owned this mansion? Why did it feel so much like home? And if someone had prepared this place for them, why weren't they here now? As the sun set, casting gold over the snow, they explored the rest of the house. Every room was filled with echoes, photographs in dusty frames, a coat that looked exactly like their mother's, a half-finished puzzle on a small table by the window. It was comforting and disturbing all at once. Daniel walked the perimeter, checking every lock and window. "We'll stay the night," he said, meeting Lily's gaze, "but keep your shoes by the door, just in case." Maddie, exhausted, soon fell asleep with Blitz curled at her feet, his breath rising and falling like a gentle lullaby. Lily sat awake in the dim firelight, mind whirling with questions. She touched the music box, tracing its familiar carvings, trying to make sense of the impossible. Was this place a miracle or something more complicated? Had someone been waiting for them? Or was it just a lucky coincidence? And why did it feel, deep down, as if fate itself had led them here? Outside, the wind howled, and snow drifted down from the black sky. Inside, the mansion glowed, shelter against the storm, and a puzzle yet to be solved. For tonight, they were safe. But the mystery only deepened, twisting around them like the winter itself, refusing to let them go. Night deepened over the mansion, the world outside silent but for the groan of old timbers and the faraway wail of the wind winding through snow-laden branches. Inside, shadows danced across ornate wallpaper. Lily sat on the edge of an armchair, legs curled up, heart refusing to settle. Maddie slept on the couch, pale but peaceful. Blitz curled tight at her feet, a silent sentinel, never quite resting. Daniel paced the main floor, every step slow and thoughtful. He was searching, but for what, Lily couldn't quite guess. She couldn't sleep. Not in a place that felt both like a haven and a trap. Not with the unease growing inside her with every creak and sigh of the old house. The fire snapped, sending new shadows spinning. Lily tried to lose herself in their shapes, but the details of the mansion kept intruding. Photos on the mantel with faces blurred by time. A child's drawing taped to the fridge with the words, "For Daddy," in a handwriting she almost recognized. The faint scent of cologne that reminded her of Christmas mornings. She told herself it was just exhaustion, nerves twisted up after too many hours in the snow, too many close calls. But the sense of being watched wouldn't fade. Even Blitz, who usually radiated calm, kept one ear cocked toward the hall. Daniel returned, sitting on the hearth. His voice was soft, low so as not to wake Maddie. "Did your family ever come up here before? To the mountains?" Lily shook her head, hugging her knees. "Never. I don't think this place is even on a map." She hesitated. "But some of this stuff, it's like it's been here waiting for us." Daniel nodded, rubbing at the scar on his chin. "Some places hold memories. Sometimes it's hard to know what's real." A sudden noise, soft, almost like a footfall, echoed from the kitchen. Blitz was up in a flash, hackles raised, low rumble vibrating through his chest. Daniel's hand went to the flashlight on his belt. Lily's pulse spiked as she followed behind. The kitchen was empty. The back door was locked, the windows fogged with cold. But in the dim glow of the nightlight, a new set of boot prints marred the floor, fresh, wet, tracked in from the snow. Blitz's nose worked furiously, his whole body tense, pointing to a spot near the pantry where the prints vanished beneath a heavy throw rug. Daniel knelt, peering closer, then pulled back the rug to reveal a narrow trap door, the wood swollen and rimed with frost. He pressed on it, but it wouldn't budge, frozen solid. Lily's breath fogged in the cold air. "Who else is here?" she whispered. Her fear was back, sharp as glass. "We'll find out," Daniel murmured. "Stay with Maddie, keep her close. Blitz, stay." But Blitz wouldn't budge from the door, whining softly, his body taut with alertness. The atmosphere thickened, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Daniel tried the trapdoor again, but it was stuck fast. With a sigh, he stood and scanned the room. On the counter sat an old journal, its leather cover cracked, a broken pencil tucked inside. He picked it up, flipping to a random page, and froze. Lily, drawn by his silence, leaned over his shoulder. Scrawled on the page in uneven handwriting were 3 names: Daniel Riley, Lily Harper, Maddie Harper. Dates stretched back years, even decades, long before Lily was born, before Daniel had ever heard of Snowpine Valley. "What is this?" Lily breathed. chills crawling down her back. Daniel's mouth was a hard line. I don't know, but these are my initials, and that's my birthday. He turned the page. There were more entries, each describing events that felt strangely familiar. Lost hikers, missing persons, storms. On one page, a list of supplies was checked off in a neat, precise script. Blankets, soup, flashlight, music box. The feeling of being watched deepened, thickening the air. Footsteps upstairs. Just a floorboard shifting? Or something more? Lily gripped the edge of the table, refusing to let fear pull her under. She returned to Maddie, gathering her sister into her arms. Maddie stirred, mumbling in her sleep, one hand reaching for Blitz, who pressed his head gently under her palm. Lily watched them, her chest tight, remembering promises she'd made in the dark. She would never let Maddie go, never let the world swallow her up. The night crawled on. Daniel searched the rest of the house, every so often returning to check on the girls, each time more troubled by what he found, or didn't find. In a bedroom, a cracked photograph of a young officer in uniform. In the attic, a box of newspaper clippings about missing people, storms, and strange rescues going back 50 years. Back in the kitchen, Daniel stared at the trap door. He pressed his palm to it, as if hoping to read the secrets by touch. Someone prepared this place for us, he said at last, voice ragged. But who and why? Lily didn't have answers. She only knew the sense of unease was growing. Something or someone was drawing them into a story bigger than themselves, a story written long before they arrived. Were they the rescuers, or the ones being rescued, or just pieces in someone else's plan? As the old house groaned and the wind picked up again, Lily stayed awake, watching shadows dance. In the quiet, Blitz shifted, eyes sharp, ears up, never truly at rest. And Lily knew the night was far from over. Secrets lingered in every corner, waiting for dawn to pull them into the light. Morning came thin and gray, the first real light since the storm began. The mansion stood silent, shrouded in uneasy calm. Lot lay half awake, senses sharpened by anxiety. Daniel was already up, studying the trap door in the kitchen. The strange boot prints from last night had faded, melted by the heat, but the unease they left behind was as cold as ever. Maddie sipped her tea quietly, a trace of color in her cheeks, but exhaustion weighed heavy in her eyes. Blitz paced between the sisters, pausing now and then to sniff at the door, his movements restless, tail low and sweeping like a warning. Daniel ran his palm along the edge of the trap door, feeling for any weakness. We're going to need leverage, he muttered. Lily stood nearby, watching him, uncertainty flickering across her face. Together, they searched the house, coming back with an old crowbar from the mudroom. Daniel wedged it under the rim and braced himself. On 3. Push with me. Lily hesitated, then nodded, planting her feet and shoving hard. The wood groaned, then cracked, sending a shudder through the floor. One last heave and the trapdoor snapped open, a rush of cold, musty air rising from below. Blitz was the first down, nose low, every muscle tense. Daniel followed, flashlight beam slicing through dust. Lily helped Maddie to the top of the stairs, then descended, heart pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity. The cellar was vast and cluttered, lined with old shelves, crates, and rusting tools. Shadows pooled in the corners, heavy and unmoving. Along one wall, yellowed newspapers were pinned like grim trophies, their headlines a history of tragedy. Missing girl found in storm, local officer disappears, corruption scandal rocks Snowpine. Each headline sent a chill through Lily's spine. On a battered desk sat a pile of coded letters, maps, and faded photographs. Daniel picked up a letter and squinted, his face draining of color as he recognized a familiar signature. "This was my godfather's handwriting," he whispered. Blitz, meanwhile, scratched at a panel behind an old cabinet. With a grunt, Daniel and Lily dragged the cabinet aside, revealing a hidden compartment in the wall. Blitz nosed it open, and inside lay a folder thick with documents, papers stamped with the name of Lily and Maddie's father. Lily's breath caught. She reached for the folder, hands shaking, and opened it to a series of letters, her father's name at the top, messages about threats, warnings, even bribes refused. There were photographs of her father with Maddie and Lily as children, some she'd never seen before. Family moments tainted now with the knowledge that danger had always been near. Maddie stared at the papers, her small hands trembling. "Why did Daddy keep all this?" she whispered, voice thin as tissue. Daniel knelt beside her, voice gentle. "Sometimes, when you know something dangerous, you keep records to protect the people you love." I think he knew what he was up against. Lily leafed through more files. There were receipts, lists of names, coded references to meetings in town. So many names, some familiar, others infamous in Snow Pine Valley's history. The more she read, the clearer it became. Her father hadn't died by accident. He'd been targeted for what he knew. And now, by some twist of fate, those secrets had found their way back to her and Maddie. Daniel found a faded photograph at the bottom of the box. His godfather, much younger, arm around a boy who looked just like a teenage Daniel. Scrawled on the back, "For when the storm comes, keep them safe." A heavy silence settled. Daniel's jaw clenched. He knew something was coming. He built this place, stocked it, left clues, for someone to find. I thought my godfather was just paranoid after all the scandals in town. Now, I'm not so sure. Lily's thoughts swirled. All the oddities in the house, the familiar objects, the music box, the food in the pantry, made sense now. This mansion was never random luck. It was a safe house, a secret passed down through fear and loyalty, meant for moments like this. Blitz whined, pawing at another stack of papers. Lily pulled out a map. Routes traced in red, caves circled, notes about emergency radios and hidden supply caches. One cave matched the one where Daniel and Blitz found them. It hit Lily with a jolt. Their path here had been planned, watched over by people who had vanished or died trying to do the right thing. Suddenly, a thud echoed from above, the slam of a door or a heavy footfall. Blitz bristled, hackles rising. Daniel signaled for quiet, flashlight off. They crouched in silence, the only sound their breathing and Maddie's quickening heartbeat. A long minute passed. Then two. Nothing. But the sense of danger was real now, pressing in from all sides. Daniel rose, squaring his shoulders. "Someone's watching the house. They may be after these files." His voice was low, tight. "We need to be ready. We're not the only ones who know what's hidden here." Lily's hands closed into fists. She looked at Maddie, then at Daniel, her voice trembling but fierce. "We won't run. We'll protect what matters, just like they did." Daniel nodded, pride flickering in his eyes. "We're not alone. Not anymore." As they left the cellar, Blitz pressed close to Lily, head high, as if promising nothing would get past him. Above them, the mansion's warm lights felt thinner, the shadows longer. But in the heart of the house, truth burned, dangerous, luminous, and impossible to ignore. Outside, the wind was rising again, carrying with it the threat of those who would do anything to bury the past. But for the first time, Lily felt ready to face what was coming. Backed by the loyalty of Blitz, the quiet courage of Daniel, and the memories of a father who'd tried to leave a path through the darkness. And as the storm gathered, the secrets of Snow Pine Valley waited, just beneath the surface, ready to change everything. Dusk fell heavy over the mansion, casting long shadows across the snow and swallowing the last traces of warmth in the sky. The house felt different now, no longer just a shelter, but a fortress. Lily and Daniel had spent the afternoon double-checking locks and blackout curtains, setting up the radio from the cellar by the kitchen window. Blitz prowled the halls, senses keyed to every sound. Even Maddie, propped on the couch beneath a pile of blankets, seemed to sense the shift. She watched the adults with wide, anxious eyes, her hands resting on Blitz's fur as if he was the only sure thing in this storm of uncertainty. Outside, the wind picked up, hurling flurries against the glass. Daniel stood by the window, eyes narrowed, jaw tight. "If anyone comes," he said softly to Lily, "don't open the door, no matter what they say." Lily nodded, throat tight. She was afraid. Of what? She wasn't sure. The files from the cellar lay hidden in Daniel's backpack, along with the coded letters and the map showing routes out of the valley. She had spent hours poring over the names, recognizing more than she wished she could. People from her father's old life, men and women who had seemed normal, kind even, now revealed as players in something dark and twisted. A low growl from Blitz shattered the quiet. His body went rigid, nose pointed at the front door. Daniel moved, slow and careful, placing himself between the dog and the entry. The doorbell rang, shrill, out of place in the hush of snow. Lily's breath caught. Maddie whimpered, pressing her face into Blitz's shoulder. A shadow appeared in the frosted glass, tall, broad, wrapped in a heavy coat. Daniel signaled Lily to stay with Maddie, then cracked the door open, keeping the chain latched. "Evening, officer," came a deep, almost friendly voice. "You don't recognize me, but I knew your godfather well. Name's Elliot Hart. Roads are washed out down the valley. Thought I'd see if this old place had any room left." Daniel studied the man, searching for lies. Hart's eyes were clear, his posture open, but Blitz didn't relax. In fact, the dog stepped between Maddie and the stranger, fur bristling. That alone was enough for Daniel to keep the chain tight. "Strange you found us," Daniel said, voice flat. "We weren't exactly advertising." Elliot shrugged. "This house is old news to a few of us. I remember it from when your godfather ran rescue drills here. Figured someone would wind up here with all this weather. Mind if I come in, warm up a minute?" Lily watched from the hall, heart thumping. Something about the man felt off. Too smooth, too calm. Daniel hesitated, then opened the door just enough to let Elliot step inside, but he didn't let go of the handle. Hart stamped snow from his boots, glanced around the foyer, and smiled at Maddie. "You must be the Harper girls. Heard a lot about your dad. Good man." His gaze lingered a beat too long on Lily, then drifted toward the kitchen, where the files lay hidden. Daniel guided Elliot to the sitting room, never quite letting down his guard. "So, Elliot, what brings you to Snowpine these days? I don't remember seeing you at the station." Hart chuckled, settling into an armchair. "These days I do more work for Victor Graham. Maybe you've heard of him. Big player in town, owns half the valley, or so he likes to say." At that name, Lily felt a chill crawl up her spine. Victor Graham. The name was everywhere in her father's notes, circled, underlined, connected to the worst of the valley's secrets. Blitz positioned himself at Daniel's feet, muscles bunched, ready to spring. Elliot looked around, his tone still genial, but with an edge beneath the surface. "My boss keeps track of what's his. and he doesn't like loose ends. I was hoping you'd have a few things to hand over. Files, maybe. Letters. You know how it is. Old business. Daniel met his eyes, cold and unyielding. I'm not in the habit of giving evidence to anyone who knocks. Hart laughed softly, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sure. Only asking because it'll be easier this way. You know how messy things get when people start poking around where they don't belong. Lily stepped closer to Maddie, heart hammering. She could see it now. This wasn't a friendly visit. This was a threat. She remembered the fresh boot prints last night, the eyes she'd felt in the dark, and realized this man had been watching them for longer than they knew. Blitz growled, sharp and low. Hart's eyes flicked down, calculating. That's a good dog, he said, voice suddenly cool. Wouldn't want anything to happen to him. Or the girls. Daniel's jaw clenched. He glanced at Lily, then back at Hart. We're not handing over anything. If Victor wants to talk, he can come himself. Hart stood slowly, his bulk filling the room. Suit yourself. But you should know, you're not alone out here. I've got people waiting in the woods. If I don't walk out in 5 minutes, things get complicated. Tension coiled in the air, thick as the storm outside. Lily felt Maddie's hand slip into hers, trembling. She squeezed tight, heart pounding, searching Daniel's face for a signal. Daniel stayed calm, voice steady. You want to threaten us? Do it outside. You're not scaring anyone here. For a moment, Hart just stared at him, measuring, searching for weakness. Then he smiled, cold and satisfied. We'll see how brave you are when the sun goes down. He let himself out, slamming the door behind him. Blitz lunged to the window, barking furiously. Lily rushed to draw Maddie away, her thoughts spinning. Daniel hurried to check every lock, his hands shaking only a little. As darkness closed in, the mansion felt smaller, the threat outside more real. They gathered in the kitchen, Blitz pressed between Lily and Maddie, Daniel holding the radio in one hand and the evidence bag in the other. For the first time since the storm began, Lily felt not just afraid, but hunted. There was no running now. Only the determination to stand their ground, to protect what mattered, no matter the cost. She locked eyes with Daniel, finding in him the same resolve she felt in herself. The time for hiding was over. The showdown had begun. The house fell into a tense, unnatural quiet after Elliot Hart's departure. Outside, night pressed hard against the glass. The wind screamed down from the ridgeline, flinging icy needles at the windows. But it wasn't the storm that sent chills through Lily. It was the certainty that someone was out there, watching. Daniel gathered everyone in the sitting room, lights dimmed low. He kept the radio close and the files even closer. Blitz paced a nervous circuit around the couch, never letting Maddie out of his sight. The girls leaned into each other, and for a long time no one spoke. Every sound, a gust rattling the window, the creak of the old house settling, felt like a threat. Daniel peered through the curtains again and again, flashlight in one hand, tension etched in every line of his face. Lily watched him, heart pounding. She knew what he was thinking. How long until Hart came back? How many were out there? The first hint of real danger came as a flicker of movement outside. Blitz's ears pricked. Lily froze, eyes wide. In the darkness, a pair of headlights flashed. Once, twice, a signal. Daniel's jaw clenched. They're not leaving, he muttered. They're waiting for a mistake. Maddie whimpered, clutching Blitz's collar. Charlie hugged her close, whispering comfort, though her own hands shook. The memory of their father's warnings, about men like Graham, about never backing down, rushed through her mind. Suddenly, a metallic crash split the quiet. The back door rattled violently. Daniel was on his feet in a heartbeat, gesturing Lily to take Maddie upstairs. Blitz pressed close to the girls, herding them up the staircase, his low growl a steady warning in the dark. On the landing, Lily hesitated, torn between protecting Maddie and wanting to help Daniel. Below, the shouts of men echoed through the house, Elliot's voice sharp and cold, barking orders. Daniel's voice came back, firm but strained, telling them to leave or face the law. A gunshot rang out, splintering the air. Maddie screamed, Blitz barking furiously at her side. Lily shoved Maddie into a guest room, pushing a dresser in front of the door. She crouched, heart pounding, whispering for Maddie to stay quiet, to trust her. Blitz pressed against them, his body a wall between the girls and whatever waited outside. Footsteps thundered down the hall below. Daniel fought. Lily could hear the scuffle, the shouts, the crashing furniture. Her fear spiked, but so did something else, a fierce resolve. She remembered the flare gun Daniel had tucked away in the library for emergencies. "Stay here," she whispered to Maddie. "Don't open the door, no matter what." Maddie's eyes were huge and terrified, but she nodded, clutching Blitz's fur with all her strength. Lily slipped out, heart racing, crawling low along the upstairs hall. She found the library door slightly ajar. Inside, Daniel wrestled with Elliot, the files scattered across the floor. Elliot swung a heavy flashlight, missing Daniel by inches. Daniel drove his shoulder into Elliot's chest, knocking him back, but a second man rushed in, grabbing Daniel from behind. Without thinking, Lily grabbed the flare gun from the shelf. She aimed it at the broken window, firing into the night. The flare exploded in a burst of crimson, painting the snow in a bloody glow. Outside, startled shouts rang out. Elliot cursed, lunging for Daniel, who fought free and tackled him to the floor. Blitz thundered down the stairs, slamming into the second man, his jaws snapping, sending the intruder fleeing for the door. For a wild moment, chaos reigned. Elliot and Daniel rolled across the library floor, Lily screaming for help. Blitz barking so loud it rattled the walls. Elliot clawed for the files, but Daniel twisted, pinning him just as red and blue lights flashed outside. Sheriff's deputies, drawn by the flare and Blitz's frantic howls. The deputies stormed the mansion, weapons drawn. In minutes, Elliot and his accomplice were in cuffs, cursing and snarling. The officers retrieved the scattered evidence, their faces grim as they realized the scope of what they'd uncovered. Victor Graham's name was everywhere, tied to bribes, disappearances, and decades of buried secrets. The relief that washed over Lily was blinding. She ran to Maddie, finding her sobbing but safe, Blitz still standing guard like a knight. Daniel slumped against the wall, battered but whole, his eyes searching the room for the girls. "You did good," he managed, voice hoarse, as Lily hugged Maddie close and Blitz nudged Daniel's hand with his nose. The sheriff took their statements. The deputies called for backup and an ambulance, just in case. The storm outside had become background noise now, less frightening than the violence that had invaded their haven. As dawn crept across the sky, painting the snow a faint pink, Daniel and Lily stood side by side, watching the deputies load Elliot and his men into patrol cars. Maddie clung to Blitz, her tears finally drying as she realized the danger had passed. But the mansion, once a place of secrets and shadows, felt changed. In the kitchen, the music box played softly, the tune rising over the chaos, gentle and hopeful. Lily pressed her forehead to Daniel's shoulder. "Is it really over?" she whispered. Daniel shook his head, voice heavy but sure. "The hardest part is over. The truth is out. No one can hurt you now. Lily believed him. For the first time since the storm began, she allowed herself to hope. For safety, for justice, for a future that belonged to them and not the darkness. And as Blitz sat quietly in the first rays of sun, Lily knew that loyalty, dog or human, had carried them through the worst the world could throw at them. Together, they had survived the storm. Now they would face whatever came next, side by side. Dawn spilled pale gold across the battered mansion, its ancient timbers glowing for the first time not with secrets, but with possibility. In the kitchen, Lily sat at the scarred table, cupping a mug of tea between her hands. The tension of the night before still lived in her muscles, but the sharpest edges of fear had dulled, replaced by exhaustion and a quiet, unfamiliar hope. Deputies came and went, their boots tracking in slush and sunlight. They'd already begun packing the evidence, files, photos, coded letters, into boxes for transport to the courthouse. Lily watched them with mingled relief and grief. It was over, at least the worst of it. The faces behind Snow Pine Valley's suffering, Victor Graham, his enforcers, his money, were finally exposed to the world. Maddie curled in the sunlight on the old couch, bundled in blankets, a book open in her lap. Blitz rested his chin across her ankles, his tail thumping when Lily looked over. The dog seemed different now, no longer just a rescuer, but a companion, a constant thread binding them to the safety they'd fought so hard to win. Daniel moved quietly through the house, voice low as he spoke with the sheriff and his deputies, explaining what had happened, what he'd found. Each time his gaze met Lily's, she saw the same mixture of relief and wariness, joy that it was over, but also the wary knowledge that healing would take much longer than a single night. Outside, the storm was finally broken, the snow glittering beneath a sky scoured clean. The town was already talking. Neighbors who'd feared to speak out about missing relatives or whispered about old scandals now came forward. Some brought food or blankets. Others simply stopped to thank Daniel and the girls for what they'd survived and uncovered. By afternoon, the mansion was filled with people, some in uniform, some just lost souls searching for their own answers. The music box on the mantel played quietly as a little girl from down the road turned its key. Maddie watched, eyes wide, as the room filled with laughter and the sound of voices sharing stories and pain. The sheriff pulled Daniel aside, his tone gentle but direct. "Victor Graham's in custody, his network's falling apart. The files you recovered. They'll bring justice, not just for you, but for a lot of folks in this valley." He hesitated, then added, "But you've made enemies too, son. You sure you want to stay?" Daniel looked over at Lily and Maddie, then at Blitz, curled up beside them. He didn't hesitate. "I'm not going anywhere. There's too much to do here." Word spread quickly. The mansion, once a haunted footnote in Snow Pine's history, was now something new. At first, neighbors called it a safe house or shelter, but soon a name stuck, Harper Haven, after the girls and the legacy their father had left, not of secrets, but of stubborn hope. Lily watched as volunteers arrived to help repair the roof, paint the battered railings, and clear out the musty cellar. Children ran through the halls, their voices echoing. In the evenings, people gathered by the fire, sharing food, warmth, and hard-won stories. The house became a place where no one needed to hide what had happened to them, or pretend to be unscarred. For Maddie, healing came slow but steady. The color returned to her cheeks. She drew pictures of dogs and mountains and a house full of light, and taped them to the walls. She took to calling Blitz her guardian angel, whispering secrets to him when she thought no one could hear. Daniel would sometimes catch Blitz sitting next to Maddie as she read, the dog's ears tipped forward, as if he were listening to every word. Lily found herself changed too. For so long, she'd carried the weight of her family's grief alone, always bracing for the next disaster. Now she felt that burden ease, replaced by a network of new bonds. Daniel's steady presence, Maddie's resilience, Blitz's fierce loyalty, and the growing chorus of voices in Snowpine Valley, all calling out for a better future. Some wounds remained. Their mother was never found. That absence pressed at the edges of every celebration, a shadow that refused to fade. But even that pain, Lily realized, was no longer just her own. The story of their survival gave others permission to speak, to mourn, to hope. One afternoon, Lily stood on the mansion's porch, watching the sun sink over the valley. Daniel joined her, leaning on the rail. The air smelled of pine and wood smoke, the sounds of laughter drifting up from the kitchen. "Think you'll ever leave this place?" Daniel asked, voice gentle. Lily shook her head, smiling softly. "Not for a long time. Maybe never. It feels like home now." Daniel looked at her with something like pride. "Your father would be proud of you, Lily. You protected Maddie. You brought the truth to light. That takes more courage than most people ever have." Lily blinked back tears, nodding. For the first time, she believed it. They stood together in silence for a long time, Blitz wandering out to sit between them, pressing his warm head against Lily's leg. Inside, Maddie's laughter rang out, bright and clear, a sound that seemed to drive the last of the darkness from the mansion's corners. Harper Haven was no longer just a place. It was a promise that love, courage, and the willingness to face the truth could turn even the most haunted house into a beacon for others. The storm had left scars, yes, but it had also revealed the strength that lived within them all. And in that quiet, golden hour, Lily understood. The worst was over, but the most important part, the slow, difficult work of healing and rebuilding, was just beginning. And they would do it together, with the loyalty of a dog, the resolve of survivors, and the memory of all they'd lost and found along the way. The first warm winds of spring swept down the slopes of Snowpine Valley, carrying the scent of thawed earth, moss, and distant fir trees. The mansion, now Harper Haven, gleamed in the sunlight, its windows flung open to the world, laughter and life spilling from every room. In the yard, the snow had melted into thick, muddy patches where tulips and wild daffodils pushed up bravely, new and bright. The old fears had faded, replaced by a sense of belonging as natural as the changing seasons. Lily stood at the kitchen sink, sleeves rolled up, watching the backyard fill with children. Maddie led a pack of neighborhood kids in a game of tag, her laugh sharp and clear. Blitz was at the center of it all, tail wagging, patient and joyful, as children scrambled over him, shrieking in delight. Every so often, Maddie would stop, press her face into Blitz's neck, and whisper something, her secret guardian still, even now, when life felt safe. Daniel stepped in from the porch, hair damp from work, the lines of worry finally softening on his face. He set down a toolbox and grinned as he watched the scene outside. "You'd think these kids had never seen a dog before," he teased. Lily smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Not one like Blitz. He's a legend now." It was true. Since the showdown at the mansion and Victor Graham's fall, Blitz had become something of a town hero. Shopkeepers put out dog biscuits on their stoops. Strangers stopped Daniel on the street to thank him. not just for his courage but for giving the town a reason to believe again. More than once, Lily had caught adults watching Blitz with tears in their eyes, a reminder of hope after so much loss. Life had settled into a new, gentle rhythm. Daniel had stayed in Snowpine Valley, taking over as the lead investigator for the police department, and quietly helping to manage Harper Haven as a refuge for families in trouble. Lily volunteered at the community kitchen, her sharp mind and quick smile making her a natural leader. Maddie had made friends, thrown herself into school and drawing, her heart condition managed but no longer dictating her every move. Every Saturday, the kitchen filled with volunteers, old men who remembered the valley's hardest winters, teenagers looking for something to believe in, mothers with tired smiles and strong hands. The walls of the old house were covered with children's artwork, photographs, and thank you letters. The music box still sat on the mantel, its tune now a signal of safety instead of sorrow. Some days, the grief would catch Lily off guard, a shadow falling across the table when she remembered their mother, or the sight of Maddie asleep in the sun, too still for comfort. But those moments grew softer over time. The community that had grown around them filled the house with so much light that there was always someone to lean on, always someone to understand. On the first day of real spring, the Haven hosted a gathering for the whole town. Tables groaned with homemade food, and people poured in from every corner of the valley, some carrying their own losses, others simply hungry for connection. Daniel stood at the top of the steps, Maddie and Lily at his side. Blitz sprawled contentedly at their feet. Lily glanced at Maddie, who squeezed her hand and whispered, "Dad would be proud, wouldn't he?" Lily nodded, unable to speak, her throat thick with emotion. Daniel cleared his throat, the crowd falling quiet. This house stood empty for a long time, full of secrets, full of pain. But you all changed that. You built something new here, something better. We can't undo what's been done, but we can make sure that no one is ever left out in the cold again. That's what Harper Haven is for. And that's what this family, our family, will always stand for. The applause rolled over them, long and heartfelt, echoing through every room of the house. Later, as the sun set over the valley, Lily wandered out to the edge of the yard. The mansion glowed behind her, lights shining in every window, the sound of children's laughter floating on the breeze. She stood in the hush, watching as Maddie and Blitz led a little boy with a limp through the tulip beds, showing him that even if you started out broken, there was always a place for you here. Daniel joined her, his presence quiet and grounding. "You did this, you know," he said. "All of it." She shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. "We did it. All of us. You, Maddie, Blitz, even the people we lost." He nodded, understanding everything she meant. For a long moment, they watched the stars come out over Snowpine Valley, each one a small, stubborn light against the dark. Inside, Maddie curled up with Blitz on the living room rug, the music box playing softly. The house had changed, but the bonds forged in the worst nights of winter had become the foundations for a new kind of family, one chosen by love, by loyalty, and by the courage to hope again. As Lily watched Maddie drift to sleep, her hand buried in Blitz's fur, she understood at last what their father had tried to teach them. Sometimes family isn't about blood, but about who stands with you in the storm. Sometimes the loyalty of a dog, the resilience of a child, and the quiet strength of a stranger are enough to change everything. The scars remained, but so did the laughter, the love, and the certainty that they would never again face the darkness alone. Sometimes, The family we build is chosen by circumstance, not blood. The courage to love and protect others, especially in the face of grief and danger, is the greatest legacy anyone can leave. The loyalty of a dog, the resolve of a survivor, and the kindness of a stranger can change the course of many lives. In the coldest storms, hope can find you in the form of a friend, human or canine, who refuses to let you be lost. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and follow our channel for more powerful stories about courage, healing, and the bonds that make us family.